Very good morning to all of you. Let me start by thanking Zino and Intel for giving me this opportunity to spare time with you and share my thoughts on climate change and mission net zero, uh, racing against the time. Now, this virtual conclave is, in my opinion, is happening at a very appropriate time when we are already facing impacts of climate change in our day-to-day life, be it drought in some part of the world or heavy rainfall or sudden rainfall in some parts of the world. I will touch upon brief background about why we are talking of net zero. What is the role my organization, the Energy and Resources Institute, is playing in the whole sector? What are the government of India's policies and programs uh, to tackle the climate change issues? What role our corporates can play, and a digital economy particularly can play? And we will talk about a little bit about data centers, energy consumption, and renewable energy integration and way forward. So, to start with, the uh, climate change is basically it is proved in by international scientific community that the climate change is happening because of human activity, and the speed of climate change, which is otherwise a normal natural activity, the climate keeps changing over a long period of times, but the speed with which it is happening right now is mainly because of human activities, and mostly because of the uh, energy consumption and emission of carbon dioxide and other gases, what we call it as a greenhouse gases, which are increasing the temperature of the atmosphere. So, international community has come together through various scientific forums and established UNFCC, United Nations uh, uh, conference on climate change, and the UNFCC has been coming out with various reports about the climate change and what we should do. So the report has established that to reduce the impact of climate change, which is caused by human activities or emission of carbon dioxide, one need to fall the CO2 emissions by the human activity, by the various industrial and other activities, should fall by about 45% from 2010 levels to by 2030, and reaching net zero around 2050. That means the emissions of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has to be reduced to net to zero. That means we will have some emissions, and there will be absorption of carbon dioxide by, particularly by forest cover, by trees, bushes, etc. And so net emission should be zero, and that is what is called as a net zero. And we have to keep it below, keep it net zero, because we want to see that the temperature rise from pre-industrial levels to be limited to 1.5 degrees centigrade, which is currently around 1 degree centigrade. So we are really, you know, racing against the time, and the name of this conference is really appropriate in that perspective. Now, how do we do this? because majority of our carbon emissions are coming from energy sector, from burning of fossil fuels, be it oil, be it diesel, be it natural gas, or be it coal or biomass, etc. So for emissions are coming from fossil fuels. So one has to replace the fossil fuel economy by what we call it as a cleaner fuels or renewable fuels, uh, and renewable energy resources, and this will need to be speed up in the coming years, and that is one of the major objective of a net zero program. As I mentioned earlier, the UNFCCC has been holding its annual conference, is called as Conference of Parties, or COP, which means basically the all the governments and decision makers, policy makers come together and discuss the issues of how to tackle these climate change issues. And in uh, conference of parties organized in Paris in 2015, uh, what we call it as a Paris Agreement was reached. Under this agreement, there were three major objectives, that every nation will come out with its own uh, uh, targets for carbon reduction, which are called as NDCs. Uh, these targets will be reviewed every 5 years, and the developed countries will develop the funds for developing countries to achieve these targets. Now, if you look historically, the industrial development has happened in all the developed countries today, like Europe, US, UK, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and now recently China is also part of it. So historically, these countries have been using a lot of fuel, and they have been emitting carbon dioxide, and now when the countries like India or underdeveloped or developing countries are improving their economies, they need to use more and more fuel, or they need to use more and more energy, so that their economies grow, their activities, economic activities like industries grow, and that needs fuel, and that needs energy resources. That means these countries will try to contribute more and more carbon emissions in future. So we have a issue of historical burden by carbon emissions of some of the countries, and we have situation where countries like India or developing countries, they will be using more and more fuels in future, so that their emissions will grow. And looking at the emissions reduction targets, one has to see that this is balanced. So developed countries need to reduce their emissions substantially. At the same time, they have to help developing countries so that they adopt new technologies and new energy resources, so that their emissions are kept under control, and that will come at the cost of uh, you know um, uh, uh, cost to the economies. So developing countries are essentially looking at the economy development with the while reducing their emissions, and their NDC targets of different countries reflect on these issues in different ways. So if we look at all this development happening uh, in the context of India, where I will focus on in future. Currently, because of its economy, its size of population, because India has almost 1.2 plus billion people out of 7 odd billion total population of of the globe. Uh, we are one of the largest emitters of carbon today, because we are one of the one of the fastest growing economies, and we are a large economy. However, our per capita carbon emissions are substantially low than the same by developed countries and developed economies. So we are, one side, we don't have historical burden. Secondly, we are also having very low per capita emissions. But being a large economy and large populations, we, on absolute terms, we are third largest emitter of carbon dioxide, about 2.8 gigaton per year, next to US, China, and third is ours. So, as a responsible democracy, as a responsible country, although we don't have historical load, or even though our per capita emissions are low, we are we are looking at effective ways to reduce our emissions. And in the recent conference of parties in UK, we have announced that we will become net zero by 2070. uh, Although that is going to be a big challenge for our economy, because currently, if you look at our energy resources, almost 50-60% of our energy is coming through coal, and a large of electricity generation, almost 70% is through coal. We have large consumption of petroleum based products like diesel and petrol for transport industry and other sectors. And we are also increasing our consumption of building energy, because as in economy is growing, we are using more and more sophisticated equipments. More and more air conditioning is improving for the building, and that's why our energy consumption is also growing. Now, to tackle these things, the government of India has been, devising different policies, programs, and initiatives, so that we keep our energy consumption low by adopting energy efficiency measures in the first place, both for large scale industries, residential buildings, or appliances, etc. And we then replace that with renewable resources which are available within the country. So we have this couple of initiatives which are, which have started way back in 70s. We started using renewable energy, looking at renewable energy as, as a response to the 1973 oil shock, when oil producing companies came together and formed the OPEC, uh, and they had an immediate impact on oil supply and oil prices. And so that's when government of India started investing in research and development for renewables, which as an alternative to oil based economy. And then it started its program on solar and wind, primarily to tackle the issue of non availability of electricity in rural and remote areas. And then slowly started developing grid integrated solar and wind power projects. And in 2010, as a response to climate change, studies and climate change activities, we came out with a national action plan on climate change. And which has two major missions. One is on energy efficiency, and second is on solar energy. And we then started promoting solar energy for various applications: power generation, heating, cooling, and other applications. Now, as a part of National Action Plan on Solar Mission, we have set up a target of 20 gigawatt of solar power generating capacity, grid connected generating capacity by 2022 in 2010. And the current government, when it came in power in 2014, in 2015 they revised this target to 100 gigawatt of solar energy by 2022. And not only that, they also added additional another 75 gigawatt coming from other renewable energy resources like wind 60 gigawatt, um, biomass 10 gigawatt, sorry, hydro 10 gigawatt, and biomass 5 gigawatt. And all this by 2022. And today we have about 50 about 60 gigawatt of solar, and almost 40 plus gigawatt of wind, biomass, and hydro in the similar proportion. So the government has started investing, and also coming out with regulations and policies and programs to promote renewable energy. And as a part of our NDC commitment, we have recently revised our NDC commitment, and now we are talking of almost 50% of power generation by 2030 coming through renewables. Currently, we have installed a power generation capacity of about 410 gigawatt, which is one of the largest in the world. And out of which, as I mentioned, we have about 120 gigawatt of renewables, another 45 gigawatt of hydropower, which is also considered as renewables now, large hydropower projects. And then we have about 200 odd gigawatt of coal based, and then diesel and other power plants. So from about 25% of renewable power, we are now talking of 50% by 2030, and which will be roughly around 500 gigawatt of renewable power by 2030, because by that time our installed capacity will be going up to something like 1000 gigawatt. Now, this is as far as the our electricity generation is concerned. We are also having energy efficiency programs for high energy consuming industries like cement, steel, paper, textile, chemical, etc. And the energy efficiency program, we also have energy star rating for home appliances like refrigerator, air conditioners, etc., and which is now extended to star rating for the ceiling fans, which are low energy consuming but high in quantity, used in quantity, and thereby consuming more. We also have LED program, LED lighting, mass procurement and distribution program, which has also resulted in huge savings of CO2 emissions, because LED lightings are one of the most efficient lighting systems now in the technology wise. So on one side, we are promoting renewables, solar, wind, hydro, etc. We are also promoting biomass and bioenergy for other applications like the biofuels to replace diesel and petrol, bio CNG to replace the natural gas for transport sector. We are also now started a mission on hydrogen. Hydrogen is considered as a energy carrier, which can convert renewable energy into suitable either fuel or hydrogen can be used as a fuel to replace, say, diesel or petrol. It can also be used as a raw material in processes like steel making, where it can replace carbon coke, which is emitting again the process which are emitting carbon dioxide. And it can also be used as a hydrogen as a process requirement, for example in refineries and fertilizers, in where hydrogen is used as a raw material in the processes. And one can produce hydrogen using a variety of ways. So currently, hydrogen is produced using what we call as a methane reformation process, where natural gas or coal is reformed using steam and at high temperature, and the process natural gas, which is CH4, emits CO2 and hydrogen. And so thereby it emits carbon dioxide and adds to the emissions. So the approach now is to generate green hydrogen, basically generate hydrogen without CO2 emission, which is called as a green hydrogen. Hydrogen conventionally generated using CO2 generation is called as a gray hydrogen. And there is also another classification of hydrogen where the carbon dioxide is emitted but it is captured and stored or used for other chemical making, which is called as a CCUS, carbon capture, use and storage technologies. And when you are using that integrated with hydrogen production, the hydrogen is called as a blue hydrogen. So one is looking at hydrogen as a major energy carrier, and we are looking at hydrogen uh, coming from renewable through electrolysis process or through bioenergy process by bio CNG conversion or direct hydrogen generation in biotechnology processes. This will these are the some of the major initiatives which government of India has taken. Now if one is looking at corporates, see, all the economic development happens mainly through businesses or corporates or industries, and activities which are happening like building construction, service industry or IT industry, or brick and mortar industries, etc. So the industrial houses or business leaders are also going to play an important role in net zero. And when one is looking at government policies and government programs to promote renewables, what we need is response from the industries, particularly the large industrial houses, to adopt the renewable energy and to look at reducing their own carbon footprint, their own emissions, and thereby contributing to reduction of carbon emission in country as a whole or global community as a whole. And this is where I think this today's seminar will focus on what all the issues like geopolitical crisis which are impacting fuel consumption, which are increasing because some of the countries in Europe have switched over to coal and other fossil fuels in the light of disturbance in natural gas supply. The green supply chain for raw materials, what are the decarbonization methodologies one can look at, and and so forth. So one is looking at all these aspects, as and I think I'll specifically focus on digital economy and digitization, which is increasingly, increasing role of internet and digital technologies in day-to-day life, and thereby the infrastructure, IT infrastructure, particularly data centers and other infrastructure, they are now becoming energy guzzlers and new energy consuming centers. It is estimated by International Energy Agency that currently we are looking at around more than a 1% of electricity consumption going to only to data centers, and by 2025 it can go up to one fifth, that's about 20% in near future, because of the increasing use of internet technologies and internet uh, facilities. And that is, I think, is a matter of concern, because the data centers are using energy, for IT, for data processing, data storage, data handling, and B, to keep the facilities under controlled environment through air conditioning. And innovative technologies and innovative approaches are required to maintain this uh, energy consumption at a lower level, and also integrating it with renewable energy, so that the energy consumption and emissions are reduced. And uh, before I close, I will touch upon a little bit about my organization, the Energy and Resources Institute. We are one of the early voices on sustainable development and climate change, and we have been, in working on climate change related issues for last almost 40 years, and based out of Delhi. We have research centers in across India, in different locations like Mumbai, Bangalore, Guwahati, up in Himalayas, uh, and also working with internationally with many of the institutions. And we have been part of IPCC research and IPCC reports, which are published over a period of time. We are also working on climate change, environment, renewable energy, energy efficiency, natural resource management, use of biotechnology for energy related issues, sustainable agriculture, sustainable habitat buildings, etc. Uh, uh, I would be happy if we have any questions, or if we need to discuss further on these issues. And I wish the conclave all the best. And once again, my sincere thanks to all of you and the organizers for giving me this opportunity and listening to me. Thank you very much.